that wiggly road up the vineyard on the other side, there's a little chapel, a little yellow chapel, and just directly above that, where the trees come out, there's a sort of a gap in between the trees. At the top of, just at the edge of the tree line, the bridge comes out and directly onto the hill on the other side. Yeah, they're building an approach road from the bridge down here up to the top there, which is a 3-lane road, and the motorway is 4 lanes.
So is it definitely going in?
Well,
looks like it.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah,
Prevent.
We're fighting tooth and nail to stop it, and we're getting more and more publicity all the time. And it always feels like we're moving forward. Since we organised our last event in Berlin, where we had Hugh Johnson and Jancis Robinson come over and Stuart Piggott, ever since then the press hasn't stopped. The BBC were here 2 weeks ago, New York Times the week before, Radio 4 are doing an environment show about it. And the more we're in the press, the harder it is all the time for the politicians to justify it. Because if you look into all the reports, all the traffic reports, the tourism reports, everything that's been published that you can see, where you can work out why the road should be here, or there's holes in all of it. There's really no justification to have a motorway here. If anything, all that's needed is a local connection between this high side of the river and the other, but there are plenty of other ways to do that. And in fact, there were already plans to make the motorway crossing at Mulheim further down the river, and to do it on the level and not to do it at such a place like this. And the only reason that it was here was because they wanted a flat connection in the 60s to join up the military bases, so that they could get tank traffic across without coming down into the valley and up the other side.
Presumably there's a few politicians who have staked their careers on it?
Yes, absolutely. And they've got other disasters, other similar huge white elephants hanging around their necks already. So it's a bit, it's incredible that they're really still pushing forward with this. But unfortunately, all the major political parties in the local government have had a stake in it over the years.
It looks a bit depressing to see the work beginning to start, a little
yes,
ominous.
It is. At the moment, it's pretty superficial damage. They're digging trenches here and on the other side through the trees. There's no concrete laid yet. There are 2 enormous holes up on the hill further down above the vineyards, where they're building green bridges for the motorway. And there you really get the impression how deep they have to sink it into this hillside.
But nothing terribly expensive.
Nothing at the moment expensive to put right.
Yeah.
Once they start building the bridge next year, then it really gets expensive. If they run out of money while they're doing that, then it's a complete disaster, And that's one of my greatest fears, that they actually start building this thing and then they go, oh, we can't finish it.
And they leave it there looking like an
eyesore. The geology of the slopes on the Erzig side is very unstable. They've drilled down 50 metres and they can't find any solid ground, so they know it's going to cost an awful lot more than their projected costs. And their costs come from 1992. At the moment, because of our pressure, they're doing a new, what they call cost-benefit analysis.
What about the effects on winemaking and ramifications for winemakers?
Yeah, it's not so bad here in the valley, apart from obviously if your vines are directly under the bridge, or they're going to have shadow cast on them. And that's the only thing that they're reckoning on giving compensation for, is for the vines that might be in shadow. They're not thinking about how the wind changes, that you get more thunderstorms with big bridges, that they're cutting a tunnel through the top of this hill, so the cold air from the other side will come through the tunnel, and so some of the winemakers on this side are worried that the microclimates will change here. But the real main problem for the vines is on the other side, because from here, at this corner, you start with Zeltingen, and then you go through the Wieland vineyards, and then Grach, and then Bernkastel, and the motorway rides directly along the top ridge of the vineyard. So there's the vineyards, then there's trees like here, and you imagine in the top of those trees on the ridge on this side, the motorway goes all the way along the top. So that's going to cause changes in the water distribution to the vines, both from the trees and also from cutting this huge trench, so that the water can no longer move sideways through the top layer of earth.
Are there any positives for winemaking?
The government will tell you the positives are you'll sell a few more bottles of wine because you'll get more tourists here. But anybody who comes from the outside can immediately see that, it'll take people further away. They'll go to the Rhine a bit quicker, but they won't get off the bridge here. Or if they do, they'll go a bit further around. And all the big winemakers, they don't need it. They're selling wine internationally. Why do they need, a motorway here? It doesn't make any difference. We already have a direct connection from the Benelux countries, which is what they say it will help tourism, but we have a motorway 10 minutes away already, which is completely empty, and that's what this will connect up with, but they can already get to Urzig in 5-10 minutes from the motorway.
You're obviously very passionate about it. Where does that passion stem from?
It just appears to be the most harebrained scheme you can imagine. You come here, you get a feeling that this area actually needs some positive input, to bring it back onto the world stage, because 100 years ago... exactly. 100 years ago, this was the most important wine region in Europe. And now it's been forgotten about, but Riesling is coming back really strongly into popularity. These vineyards, people are starting to realise what they've got here. But because the smaller winemakers have been down on their luck for many years, they think, oh, we'll get a few more tourists, we'll sell a few more bottles of wine. They want to believe it because they're so desperate, know.
Listen, thank you very much indeed. That was very informative and passionate.
You're welcome.